Yes, thank you. Tony's there. Thank you very much. Now, we are going to commence this meeting with an introduction, and following that, it's a non-public meeting, so that means everybody will be put back into the waiting room and only invited to join the meeting when that particular item comes up. The local planning panel considers development applications that meet certain criteria, and there are criteria in terms of holding public meetings, and that's where there is 10 or more submissions. None of the agenda items today have that many, anywhere near that number of submissions. So it will be what we call a private meeting, but we give every submitter and every applicant the opportunity to address the panel. First of all, I'll begin by paying our respects, both the council and the panel, to the traditional custodians of the land, past, present and emerging, in which this meeting takes place. The panel is constituted today by 4 members, and I'll briefly introduce myself, and I'll ask each panel member to identify themselves as well and to advise whether they have any conflict of interest. I'm Jan Morell. I've been the chair of this panel since its inception. I have some 40 years experience as a town planner. I'll invite Veronique to introduce herself.
Right, I'm Veronique Marchandot. I'm the community representative on the panel. For many years, I was a councillor on this council, and I have professional qualifications in town planning and law.
Thank you. Peter?
Good afternoon, Peter Brennan. I'm also a town planner with over 40 years experience. I sit on this council's planning panel and a number of other councils in Sydney. Also, I was former director of planning at Waverley Council, and I have no conflicts of interest.
Thank you. And Tony? Tony is online and you can all see him, and we'll unmute you, Tony, to allow you to introduce yourself. Thank you.
Oh, hi everyone, Tony Caro. I'm a Sydney architect, urban designer, and work on a number of different design review panels and local planning panels.
Thank you, Tony. And I would like to advise I have no conflict of interest.
Yes, I don't have any conflict of interest on any of the items.
Me neither, Tony. Yes.
Thank you. So, and there have been conflict of interest forms filled out and signed by every member of this panel, which are also available on the website. So I will just briefly outline the process. So this afternoon, the panel will hear from applicants, submitters, and then we will go into a private session to determine the development applications before us today. And our minutes or our decisions, determinations, will be on the website generally by Friday of this week, if not at the latest next Monday. So that's the process which we go through. I will now ask the Secretariat to exclude everybody excepting the people that are involved in item number 1 on the agenda. We only have 5 items today on the agenda, and we'll exclude everybody excepting those for just stay on the line, and then we'll admit you later. So the first matter that we have on the panel for the panel today is 15A Lower Wickham Road, Neutral Bay, which is alterations and additions to a dwelling, landscaping and associated works. And I have the applicant. I don't have any people registered to speak against the proposal, against the recommendation. And I do have registered to speak representatives of the applicant, which is Natalie Nolan from Nolan Planning and the applicant Alex Lakosky. So could I invite Natalie in your hands as to how you wish to address the panel?
There's no Natalie or Alex here.
No Natalie or Alex here. We will adjourn that matter till later on the agenda.
I can ring up.
And we'll, in the interim, we'll ring up. So we'll move now to item number 2 and bring back item number 1 later. Item number 2 is 18 to Brook Avenue, Cremorne, which is demolition of the existing structures, retaining the garage, construction of a dual occupancy and associated works. And we have no objectors to this proposal, but we do have, hopefully online, representatives of the applicant, Jack Crail, Latino Properties, and James Lovell. I did see there earlier, so we can put you back up on the screen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's there.
Right, Jack, and I saw James Lovell earlier. Yep, thank you. Good. Okay, so I'm in your hands, James and Jack, as to who wishes to address the panel in the first instance.
You're on mute.
You're on mute, so if you can unmute yourselves. Peter, can you unmute them, please?
Hello, panel.
Yes, thank you. Yep.
Yeah, so there was only really one thing that we wanted to address the panel, or at least I did, which was one of the proposed consent conditions, which is number C3. And
Just wait till we turn to it, and that would be on page 33, 32 of the panel's agenda. Okay, C3.
Yeah, so basically what we would like to do is remove the requirement for 4 boreholes to be undertaken as part of that consent condition. And the reason being that a geotechnical report was submitted as part of the DA process, and that report showed that there was a number of areas within the site that had exposed sandstone, including a 6-metre rock face that goes north to south along the entire width of the site. And what the report concluded basically was that in order to determine the, I guess, the subsurface site conditions and inform the excavation and so forth, was you could determine it from looking at the rock face, and you didn't need to do any boreholes. Because all the boreholes would tell you is what you'd be looking at when you looked at the rock.
I hear what you have to say, but is it such an onerous condition? And I would have presumed, given the subject site that and the topography and steepness, that it's would not be onerous or unreasonable to ask for this.
The hard part about it is that because the site is, there's a 3-metre drop from the top of Tobruk Avenue down to the bottom. And because this is a requirement before CC, that it'd be very hard to get a drilling rig and whatnot to areas in order to do the drilling. So, you'd have to crane essentially a drilling rig over the top of the existing house and get something down below, which is quite costly when the geotechnical engineers confirmed that, you just need to look at the rock. You're going to get no additional information from undertaking boreholes that you can't get from looking at the rock.
Right, so just trying to understand, is this a condition that would be at a better stage following demolition?
Yeah, so if you weren't willing to change or delete the boreholes, we'd ask if it could be changed to prior to the issue of a construction certificate for construction, as opposed to prior to the issue of a construction certificate. That way we could demolish the building and then do the holes afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Very well. Do any panel members have a question of Mr. Crail while he's on the line? No, on that matter?
Not on that matter, sorry, Jane.
No. Okay, thank you. And is that all you wish to address us on, Mr. Crail?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lovell, can I invite you to address the panel?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I'm going to be very brief. I was just going to say that we've carefully read the assessment report And other than the condition that Mr. Pale has identified, the applicant's happy with the content of the report and the other conditions that are recommended, and I'm otherwise available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Caro does have some questions. Thank you.
It's a very minor question. It was raised by one of the other panel members, but I'll pick it up. We were just wondering about the access to the lower dwelling unit through the garage, and whether it was possible to make that more formal and perhaps safer and more pleasant as the address to the project. I mean, Veronique, you may want to add to this discussion.
I think you've outlined it very well. I was looking actually to just mark the entryway with perhaps a paint on the garage would be effective enough to just mark it as a sort of like universal access to the lift itself.
James, yeah, I can see you nodding, but we're being recorded.
I'm sorry, I'm sure that's fine, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
How wide is the garage? I think that's really a question because we wouldn't necessarily want it to get any wider to accommodate that.
It's as wide as it can go, basically, and it's approximately 6.4, I think.
Yeah.
Well, 6.4 should be enough for some tandem stacked cars, plus one of these garages having a dedicated zone for pedestrian access to the lift that goes down to the lower unit. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, we wouldn't be keen on really doing the car stacker.
No, it's not a car stacker. Sorry.
It's just providing an identification of the pedestrian entrance through the garage to the lift. I think we could accommodate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes, it's a slightly wider garage, but actually, it looks like it's 3.4 metres internally.
That's right.
And the garage beside it is 3.2 something. So really it's a question of, possibly actually providing a front door or gate and two separate panel lift doors, one for each garage, rather than one single form. Would that be possible? Is really the question.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah. I think you're going to be very difficult to do it in the width available, but Jan, I think really over to you how we might handle that.
We'll discuss it following what. I'd just like to hear the response from the applicant as to whether, in fact, they see that as feasible or necessary.
Madam Chair and Mr. Caro, is it to looking at the plan? Is it the left-hand garage that requires the point of access to the lift, or are you talking about lift access for both dwellings being improved?
No, we're talking about, unless I'm misunderstanding it, there's the garage that's right on the boundary between 16 and 20.
Yes.
Garage to dwelling 2.
Yeah, garage to dwelling 2, which has got an arrow annotated as wheelchair access to lift. Now, is that that is only to dwelling 2, which is the lower dwelling?
Yeah.
And it's wheelchair access, so it's going to have to be 1 metre wide at least. Is that right?
So that garage is the wider of the two garages. That garage is 3.45 metres wide, which provides sufficient space for the vehicles and then wheelchair access. But I'm sure that...
But only as a shared space, I would think.
That's right.
At 2.3 metres is a typical residential garage allowance. So even with this proposal, you're proposing to share a universal access with a parking space.
Yeah, so it will be difficult to separate that into a separate walkway, but it wouldn't be difficult to more clearly define that and improve that for that resident who's going through the side of the
And so
garage.
someone who came to that wanted to get in and use the lift, not an occupant, but a visitor. How would they actually do that?
well, they'd need to go through the garage there. So that would be a matter
Yeah,
of.
but what would there be? Would there be a call button or something on the garage wall?
I would think so, yeah.
Yep. Anyway, I think that answers my question. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
No other questions?
The EV point.
Mhm.
The other question is, are you willing to actually implement in the garage electrical points for future electrical vehicles?
Yeah, that's no problem.
So you wouldn't object to a condition to that effect?
No, that's fine.
Okay, you probably were going to do it in any event. Yep. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you both for assisting us this afternoon, and our decision will be on the website. Thank you.
Thank you.
We might just see whether we can go back to 1. Did we have any luck in?
Madam Chair, I've just called the applicant and also left an email message, but haven't heard anything today.
Okay, so let's just move through the agenda and we'll put them to the end. Very well. Item number 3 is 9 Carlisle Lane, Wollstonecraft, and this is alterations and additions, including a new dormer to the property. And we do not have any objectors, any submitters that are registered on this matter, but we do have the applicant's representatives, which is, well, we've got the applicant herself, Tina Engelin, and Jenny and Tom Arthur are the owners, observing, I understand, and Madeline Marrick, town planner, representing the applicant. So Madeline, would you like to address the panel? She there?
Yeah, no,
And we haven't got her on mute?
Nope.
Madeline, could you make yourself known to the panel, please?
Sorry, I couldn't get it off mute.
Yeah.
Yes, I am Madeline from Corona Projects. We assisted Tina with the town planning matters. I don't have anything particular to address to the panel, but happy to answer any questions.
Right, very well. And so I invite the panel. Tony, do you have a question for the applicant?
No, I have no questions. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Questions, Madam Chair?
No, ma'am. No. Very well. Thank you for making yourself available, Madeline, and the others. The panel will be making a decision later on today and it'll be on the internet. Thank you for attending the meeting.
Thank you.
Now we'll move through to item number 4, which is 242 Miller Street, North Sydney. And this is for the fit out and change of use of the premises, signage, hours of operation and installation of a front top solar panels out of sight from the street. And we have no objectors to this matter. Once again, we have just representatives of the applicant, Ada Lowe and Alan Linklater. So can I invite either one of you to address the panel? We have read the report and we've all had the benefit of discussing it with the officer as well, and we are aware of the location and site.
Thank you. Thanks, panel. The application is for a very small and fairly minor, in our opinion, development. We're hoping to get approval for it as submitted. We seem to have provided all the requirements for, or as requested by council. The changes were very minor and most so I guess all we could say is we'd look forward to having a stamp on the application. Are there any comments or questions that you'd like to ask us?
The only question I have of you is, are you happy with the conditions?
I haven't seen the conditions.
Oh, they're on the website.
The heritage ones.
Yes, yeah, they are on the website, the conditions, but they're mainly to deal with heritage conservation works.
Okay, look, on that particular point, thank you for raising that. One of the access requirement or access reports required a second railing on the stair. Point out the stair is a lovely old timber stair, and it is part of that heritage context. but the stair itself is only 690 wide in its current guise. It can't be changed or modified in any other way. And to put an additional railing in that will reduce the stair to about a 590 clear access way, which to me is kind of lunacy. The council did agree through negotiations to pay for the cost of this railing if necessary, and I wasn't part of that arrangement. Otherwise, I would have resisted quite strongly. The stair has acted, it's to a private space upstairs. It won't be public areas. And the width of a stair of 1 metre wide and BCA requirements serve, as you are well aware, office floors, apartment floors, and people having more than 100 people using that stair for 1 metre wide. So there'll only be about 2 or 3 maybe upstairs. And so the stair width is more than adequate the way it is, and has acted safely and securely for the last, over 100 years since it was built. So that requirement in the access report of an additional railing, to me, is insane and should be just totally deleted or overruled as a condition of consent.
Very well. I'll look for that particular condition. I haven't found it as yet. Has another panel member found it?
I don't think it's in the conditions of consent. It might have been in the access report.
It's in the,
Yes,
that's true. It's
consult.
in the access report, but I'd like it to be in the conditions of consent to overrule that requirement. Otherwise, when we go to the CC, somebody's going to require a railing, which is mad. And then we got all sorts of issues coming back and knocking on your door again to get that condition removed. So if we could do that now, that would solve a lot of issues in the future, I think.
Well, Mr. Linklater will investigate that after in our closed session.
Excellent.
And,
thank you.
And thank you for raising us and assisting the panel. And thank you both for being there. We will be making our determination later today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, so we'll now move on to the next item, which is item number 5. And item number 5 is 104 Wickham Road, Neutral Bay, which is an alterations and additions to a single-storey heritage listed detached dwelling, including internal alterations as well as external, and a swimming pool. I don't have any submitters to this particular development application, no objectors. I do have the applicant's representatives, which are Carl Rutherford and John Altram, the heritage architect. So if I can invite you both to join us. Thank you, John. I can see you on the screen. And I can't see Carl Rutherford. Is there?
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Yes, you are. Yes, yes. Okay. We've had the benefit of the council's report and the site, understanding the site. So if I can invite you to address the panel and respond to anything in that report. Thank you. And I'm in
Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
Oh, sorry,
yes.
ma'am.
Yep. No, you're right. Continue. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think where I'd like to just start with this is, we've originally provided a solution to this site for our client. They had a pre-existing DA which they didn't like, didn't feel would work for their family, and engaged myself to prepare a design along with John to address their, living situation, their family, and how they wanted to utilize the site. We came up with a proposal, we submitted it to council, and through a fairly extensive process of talking to council about their concerns, especially the heritage concerns, we actually submitted some amended plans, which extensively addressed every single one of their concerns. And, that was very clearly acknowledged by the planner, that we had, taken extensive time to address those concerns. There is also a pre-existing application that was approved for a first floor addition, which we referenced in a lot of the communications to council. And I'm not sure if you've had access to a lot of the communications outside of the report that was given and the plans. there was a lot of email, with sort of markups and, attempts to address council's concerns, especially the heritage concerns. And I'll let John speak more to that. But, we really did try to strike a balance between a beautiful home for our clients who live in a beautiful area, as well as addressing, a lot of the heritage items that would have come up. We also note that the site is located in quite a complex location, surrounded by apartment blocks, where there's obviously that can obviously bring up issues of view loss and things, which we have tried to address. And just to touch on one point about the view loss that council had brought up, the images that they used in their report were actually not at eye level from a standing position. When you look at those views, the roof form of our proposal actually addresses the view loss by allowing you to still see the water straight through the split between the existing roof and the new roof. So there are things like that. This is
from the adjoining residential flat building.
Yeah, so I'm not sure of the item in council's report, but they had a balcony view and an internal kitchen view, which were probably taken from about...
We have seen those, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, the proposal doesn't actually block those views of the water. Yes, it's across a site. There's going to be some impact to the roof of any roof form that we put there. However, the split between the two roofs is actually taken that water view into account, and you can see the water straight through that split. I'll let John speak to the heritage aspect again, but there was mention of the stairs not working with, not complying with the heritage aspect of the building, which, I tend to disagree with, considering there was already a staircase that was pre-approved, which, by the way, we worked out couldn't actually work in construction, like from a construction point of view. And we've designed a stair that is not only logical to build, but also does provide an easy access to all aspects of the building, and sort of is in a central location that allows all the uses of the building to come together. We did submit an amended plan for the upper level, which completely reduced a lot of the floor space, and it actually reduced it to the point where I think we were slightly less than the already approved plans of the previous application. So we've really gone to extensive lengths to try to minimize the building and also address council's concerns. There were some hand sketches done where we overlaid the approved and the proposed, both the original proposed and the amended proposed. And I'm not sure if you have all managed to see those, but they very clearly showed we weren't actually going much further, bigger, different to what had already been approved. Yes, we're doing a different roof form, but we did honestly believe that the very contrasting metal roof, squared, boxy form that had just been shoved between the two pitched roofs didn't enhance the heritage aspect or the building aspect in any way either. It also had very low ceilings, very, it wasn't really a very usable space for the owners. So, and there were, by the way, there were also some minor adjustment. There were some minor things that the planner had brought up about non-compliances with site coverage. Just so you all know, those are easily addressed. We can address those, by submitting an amended plan. It'll take a couple of minutes to do. It was something that was brought up about it to myself a couple of days before this meeting, and we just didn't have a chance to address them and make it compliant, but it's a very simple and easy thing to change those matters. I think that's pretty much all I need to say from a planning and overall point of view. over to John, if John would like to say anything.
John? Take yourself off mute. You're still on mute?
Yes, not anymore. Thank you, panel. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I think Carl's run over the major issues that have been raised in the DA assessment. Obviously, the house is a very nice example of a Federation-style house. It has been altered, has a garage to the side, and obviously is now surrounded by apartment buildings. The proposed scheme reflects very much the approved scheme in terms of the extent of the works, the changes on the ground floor, and the scale or floor plate of the addition on the first floor. The major difference is there's a slight change in the stair detail and a change in the detail to the roof addition. I was very bemused by Council's reaction to the placement of the stair, which I think is very sensible. It's in an area that's already been altered. It has doors onto the garage terrace and is a secondary hall off the main hall. And the aim was to try and not disturb that main hall at all. And the report makes note of a connection between the dining room and the living room and the kitchen, but there is no connection. There is a door there, but it's not an open space in the manner of the connection between the major rooms in the house. And it seemed an ideal location because it's sensibly placed in order to arrive at the upper landing in the rear section of the house. So I can't see any heritage issues in regard to the placement of the staircase. In regard to the upper floor addition, obviously what was approved was a very box-like form, basically plonked into the back of the valley at the back of the building. And the clients didn't like that, and I'm not surprised they didn't, neither did I. And so Carl has developed a scheme which puts that accommodation into a pitch roof form. It does alter the form of the roof at the back, but I think in a very sympathetic manner, and also provides a separation between the new roof and the existing roof by the little V cutout that Carl was referring to in order to preserve views. So rather than read vertical walls rising from the ridges of the rear roof, we will now see a roof form which moves away from you from the eye line when you look at the property from the south. I think it's a far more sympathetic and appropriate form for that addition than what was approved. It also maintains a descending scale at the rear because the ridge height of the new addition is lower than the main ridge height. And I think it's very well detailed in a very simple form, which will allow the significance of the place to be maintained.
Very well. Thank you for your presentations. I know that panel members do have questions. So can I invite Tony Caro first?
Thanks, Jan. Hello, Carl and John. Look, we've got a few questions really about, I suppose, principally how this proposal impacts upon what we see as a particularly valuable and fine piece of Federation architecture in a prominent location that, because of the surrounding street geometry, is kind of a local landmark. And obviously, when you start to want to do what you're doing, the ambition in most cases is to minimise its visual impact and try and preserve as much of the fabric and character of the building as possible, which you've outlined as what your approach has been. I guess our questions arise in a way from lack of information that clearly explains what the impact is. We have a series of elevations and a photograph of the existing building, but what would have been very helpful was to actually, in a 3D model, have seen this additional piece. So it doesn't need to be a beautifully rendered photo montage, but just the simple massing of what's proposed, and to be able to see it from key places within the public domain around the site. And I think this really started in a way because of the chimneys being demolished. And when you look at the key view of the building from, I guess, the southeast, the two chimneys are very kind of significant, we think, along that southern elevation in terms of the character of the house. Yet the way I read the drawings, as far as I can determine, the chimney is not within the footprint of what you're proposing for the upper level extension. And I might ask you to clarify that, because I'm not entirely sure I'm right, Carl.
Carl, you can take yourself off mute. Thank you. You're still on mute. Thank you.
Thank you. It wasn't allowing me to.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tony. Look, I'll respond to the chimney, the question about the chimneys first. We are happy to retain that chimney. That was something that, we're discussing on back and forth. The chimney's in pretty bad condition. And it was something that, we were concerned that it would fall over. 2, how do we resupport it? And 3, from a functional point of view, it's not functional now, and it wouldn't really be functional in our proposal, as you kind of alluded to. But if that was something that council wanted us to retain, that would be fine. It's not a big deal.
Well, I think from the retention of heritage fabric perspective of the building, there's a lot to be said for retaining it.
More than happy to do that. Not a problem at all.
Okay. Now, in the matter of the drawings, I think you, as a designer, probably understand what I'm saying, but I think the panels of, we understand what the problem is here, but we don't really understand how impactful this new extension is. And we spent a lot of time discussing, does that upper extension need to be as big as it is? You've talked about articulating, or John did it, articulating the new form from the main hip of the front of the building with a kind of a valley space between them. But that's quite antithetical to the whole kind of idea of these kind of hipped gable roofs that sit over these big Federation houses. And we were kind of wondering, could the plan slide further towards the street? Well, it kind of already is, I suppose. But, one, if you kind of extended the proposed gable through to the existing hip, I presume they're at the same pitch, that might start to be more consistent with how these roofs are traditionally built. And it is a bit lower, so it wouldn't necessarily, it would sit tucked in behind it. And also, what can you do to reduce the kind of footprint, which would, I think, reduce probably the view from particular points, maybe, which, quite simply would mean getting rid of a bedroom and a bathroom, probably. So they're the kind of things we've talked about. And I suppose our question is, are you amenable to having to those kinds of approaches?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a discussion with the client, but I think we're pretty open to, finding a solution that works. If I can just address the roof concern first, you spoke about the roof extending through to the existing front major.
Well, the plan does below it, doesn't it? The plan
does, yes.
Yeah, so it's just simply a matter of extruding that new roof through till it meets the western side of that hipped main roof element.
I mean, we'd be happy to do that. We were only trying to sort of give it a bit of separation and allow the front of the house to be kind of what it is now and not impact it at all. We're happy to extend it along there. It'll create a bit of ceiling space in there, which would be quite nice. And just for your information, Tony, the original application actually had the back roof matching the front roof. It still had the valley in the middle, but it actually matched in pitch, matched in height, and then we completely reduced it. So we lowered it, shifted it in, reduced it.
It's a bit hard for me to imagine, Carl. I think I know what you're saying, but what's before us is what the drawings are. So, look, I've probably said enough. It'd be better for me, Jan, to hand back to you. Thank you, Carl. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony.
No, I think it's worthwhile continuing that conversation, Tony. You can't, Carl, share your screen of that particular plan, which is DA07, can you? So you can, so that you can understand.
I likely could. Give me one moment. Would you like the current proposed plans or the original proposed plans? The current? Yep.
We're looking at the current, so we're
Great.
not looking at the last one. So we
Okay.
just need DAO 7 and then I think Tony will be able to further articulate the concerns that we have about that roof extending so
Sure.
far back. And if in fact the chimney is also retained, that will assist, I would have thought. Okay.
Sure, one moment. Let me just try and share the screen.
A bit of a trip. Out to there. That all shifts a bit. There's some space. Okay. And then
Sorry, one moment. Unfortunately, it won't let me share screen until I quit
okay.
Zoom and reopen it.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I've just got, we can all be on the one page, which is DAO 7. And you can see what.
Did that work?
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
Yes. Good. Lovely. Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Now that clearly demonstrates what Tony was saying there by pulling back that upper extension towards the street.
So you mean this part here, right?
Where's your cursor?
To fill this gap?
To fill the gap. Yep.
Yep.
And then it would be pulled back. You wouldn't get the same level of room, but you would still, I'm sure, be able to work out something so that it then forms part of what is the that roof, and it is less heavy on the rear as such. And then you'd have the retention of the two of the chimney, the twin chimney there.
And the other matter I raised, Jan, was that looking at the elevation, the new extension's got a gable facing west, I guess. Is that right?
Yes, just down here.
Was whether we could investigate pulling that more towards the street or in an eastwardly direction, which would involve the loss of some gross floor space on that level. So it may require you to do a bit of replanning there, but and in doing that, is it still a gable or is it actually a hip? All of which would be driven by trying to minimise the visual kind of bulk of it from the public domain. That's really, I think, where the panel's coming from. This is one, it needs to be obviously sympathetic with the building, but it also needs to minimise its kind of impact on the existing bulk and scale of the building. They're really the kinds of things we talked about. And just if you could just go back to that previous drawing, forgive me for not being clear about this, but the elevation, there's a dormer. Is that just, can you talk to me about that dormer with the curved roof line on it, just next to the chimney?
Yeah, sure. So the currently approved DA has a dormer there in a very similar position.
But it's not constructed.
Not constructed, approved, but not constructed.
So are you saying it's going to be constructed?
that's what he's put in.
Well, as in, sorry.
It's for that bedroom, okay. Yeah.
It's for that bedroom. It provides some ventilation, provides, light.
Yeah, I guess there'd be a question about why has it got that particular architectural detail compared to the kind of more angular forms of the existing roof?
We were trying to not only sort of keep the character of the building, but, provide a little bit of a modern interpretation. We believe that the currently approved DA took it to the extreme where they they went completely opposite and provided a box which didn't really speak to anything.
Well, I
of
think
the
it might
existing building.
it might make sense if you applied it to this whole upper story thing, but it just seems to be a bit of a remnant from something previous. That's as a comment. That's a very minor.
Sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Jan.
Thank you. And council does have guidelines on dormers as well. So that might be worthwhile looking at for consistency here.
Sure.
Peter, do you have any questions?
I think
No?
Tony covered. Only comment that I think I'd like to see what was approved in greater detail, rather than just the outline on the plan, actually, to understand how that fitted in with the rear section of the roof.
Jan, I have one more comment. Sorry, Peter. Were you finished?
Yes, Tony.
Yeah, sorry. One thing we perhaps have a little bit overlooked, and again, I think it's just because of but if you look at both of these elevations at the rear of the house, in grey, it's quite subtle, but in grey, I think is the existing roof line and a kind of a bit of a lean-to at the back. Is that right? Is that the existing line of the house?
So
where the cursor is.
Where the cursor is the existing roof line, yes.
And then it flattens out onto a kind of a section at the back there.
Yeah,
very
sort of
low.
very low,
So,
very, very
so
low.
again, that to the left of that, you've flattened the roof pitch out at the rear and actually extended the existing building at the rear.
Yeah, just
for the
signage, yeah.
Yeah, so again, that is increasing the kind of mass and bulk. I think it's probably fairly consistent with what the building is, but I'm just making the point that it's in assessing this and how well it integrates with this very fine artefact. I think it would be much more helpful if we could see some 3D representations in order to allow us to understand it. Thanks, Jan.
Right, thank you. Right, so as you know, it's recommended for refusal. What the panel is seeking to assist is to provide some guidelines in terms of where you may go from here. And I think it's important that, as we said to the officers that addressed us, we have to look at this on its merits as opposed to what's been approved and how it's been changed, because at the end of the day, this is not a modification. This is to stand on its own and how appropriate it is for this heritage item in this location. We do have regard for the fact that it's rather unique. It is the gem in the whole of that streetscape when you look up there, and our concerns are, which you are also doing, is ensuring that from a heritage point of view, we retain its prominence and everything else about it. And our concerns really mainly are with respect to the public domain views. And this clearly is different from the original that was approved. And in that regard, you know, the retention of the chimneys, looking at the dormers in terms of their actual detail and design, those sorts of things, taking out that valley and pulling it back, perhaps not achieving the same floor space, I think you probably would go a long way to assisting the applicant in this regard. It would be something that would have to be assessed, and it could be done by what we call, as you know, a Section 8.2 review, and where you may be able to submit amended plans if they're not considered to be significantly different from this development application, and that's not my call. And clearly it would have to be advertised, but we've just tried to provide some guidance because we like to see the continued use of heritage items. We think it's very, very important. And as I said, this is a particular gem in its location. So is there anything further that you'd like to ask us?
No, just thank you. And it's clear where you have been coming from with your concerns. As you correctly identified, we'd be happy to enter a discussion about what could be done to move us towards an approval. We did sort of try to work very closely with council to do that. We haven't quite gotten there, and that might be something, like you said, we could address in a section 8.2. I think myself, I'm okay with that. I think our client would probably be okay with that. And just thank you.
Right.
And sorry, Jan,
Yes.
sorry, I've got one more, question. I just wanted to have a question in regard to materials. Seeing that you're extending existing roof planes and some new roof planes and brickwork in certain parts, what are your thoughts about materials to match what's there?
Well, in regards to the brickwork, there'll be a bit of the house that gets demolished at the rear that has already that face brickwork. We'd definitely be looking to reuse all of that for the face brickwork. In terms of the tiling, by taking away the two valleys and some of the back of the roof, we believe there'll be enough tiling to sort of reuse on that existing roof. And any additional tiling that might be required, we would match like for like, or find some recycled roof tiling that would match. On the rear gable, there's some sort of fish scale looking cladding. That would need to be new, but we were looking to match the existing fish scale cladding on the sort of gable roof that comes out onto the terrace. So mostly
you'd be happy to commit to matching the existing material either from what you've salvaged from the site or from other sources.
Yeah, and that was the original intention completely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. And just one other question is with respect to the, I've had a much greater understanding now with your assistance, but with respect to the internal alterations, I think that needs to be clearly justified in terms of the workings and the floor plan. And obviously you're going to have to do an archival depiction of it, so that documentation, but just so that we can understand fully why you've got the internal hallway the way you have, staircase the way you have, and why it's necessary to do those internal alterations to achieve what you're trying to achieve. Okay, and as Tony says, we do need those representations of the presentation from the public domain.
A 3D model that a simple model showing the form that you could move around and see from various points would be great.
Perfect.
Yep. Very well. Well, thank you very much for attending, both of you. It'll be no surprises to what our minutes will be, but thank you for attending, and it's allowed us to understand the situation further too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Very well. We'll go now to the final item and then back to the first item, which is 22 Premier Street, Cremorne, item number 6, and this is alterations and additions to an existing semi-detached dwelling. And we do not have any objectors or submitters who wish to address the panel, but we do have a representative on behalf of the applicant, Stephanie Brancatasano. Is that correct?
Hi there, Stephanie Brancatasano, yes.
Thank you. Yep. You're the architect for the applicant or the applicant?
I am the architect and the applicant.
Yes, lovely. Thank you, Stephanie. Yep.
Hi, yeah, just a quick note to say and address the panel and say I'm supportive of the council officer's report and recommendation for approval. I worked, and the consultant town planner worked with the council officers to ensure that the council is satisfied with the solution presented. Through the assessment process, there are a few changes to the upper level addition, and we are all comfortable with where we have landed with the design as currently documented. I note there are no objections to the scheme, as you mentioned, and the neighbours were also satisfied with the project. And I just want to note that I'd be happy to see the scheme proceed as it is, along with the council conditions presented in their report. So I'm just here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, because Tony Caro, our resident architect, urban designer, does have some questions for you. So thank you, Tony.
Hi, Tony.
Thanks, Jan. Hello, Stephanie. Yes, look, we have, gone. I understand that the recommendation is for approval. My question is really squarely about architecture. And how this new, it's really a question to you about how you believe this particular form, and I'm restricting my comment to the top story bedroom element,
yes.
because I think we're all comfortable with the middle and basement levels being a kind of mirror image of what's happening on the other half of the semi.
Absolutely, yeah.
However, this new additional room extrudes itself through the pitched roof of this, well-built, well-mannered interwall brick building.
Yes.
In a kind of a way that I'm not really understanding about how it integrates with that building. And I think it's important that it does in an architectural sense.
Yes.
And I'm not saying it needs to mimic it.
Yes, I understand.
But it is higher than the existing ridge line, and it is also significantly non-compliant with the height line.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
So. I really, I think improving its integration architecturally with this building, and I'm not for a moment saying how you might do that, but I'm really just interested in hearing what you have to say about why you've done that shape, why are the materials what they are, and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's set back beyond the existing cross ridge, and I think that was very important from a streetscape point of view. To not dominate from the streetscape by sort of protruding in front, which will be to the east of that existing ridge. It's essentially meant to, or intended, I should say, to appear almost as a dormer with only a slight 260 mil protrusion above the ridge line. And I think that, the result of that obviously is the significant slope of the site. And that's the reason that there is the height limit breach. But I mean, we're sort of picking up the hipped roof on exactly the same sort of pitch of the hipped roof of the existing semi-detached tiled roof. So it is, from my point of view, meant to sort of be recessive and just sit back beyond and just pick up the lines that have already existed, really. Previously, the form was a sort of had a parapet with a sort of boxier shape, but we wanted to sort of, I guess, pick up that line of the hip roof, which then, opened up, made the recede more, but also just open up that sort of view corridor between the flat building and this project, this sort of proposal.
Can you just go to panel members? I presume no one can get this up on the screen, but drawing DA 501.
501.
Yes, I have that.
I don't think I have a page number.
I have it in the plans and I'll share it. Thank you.
Page 67 on the big report. Yeah.
So this bedroom basically is going to look out over a flat roof with new solar panels above the living room. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. But there is a significant sort of vista and view across, Forsyth Park across to your skyline. Yeah.
The section shows it looks like full height glass. I'm not sure whether that's the best answer there, but given what you're looking onto. But look, I just just two things. One is you mentioned that it's kind of set back from the ridge line, yet on this section, it seems to bump straight into the ridge line, where the kind of olive coloured new work meets the black existing roof line.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure what you meant about it being set back behind that.
Oh, it touches it, yes. It doesn't protrude before.
So it just butts into it.
Yes.
And secondly, what ceiling height have you got in that bedroom?
So it's 2,400.
2,400.
Yes, we lowered it last week. It was 2,700.
And what's the height in the kitchen and bathroom underneath?
2,700.
Just a question, would you be able to lower the floor over those utility rooms to provide a 2,400 ceiling and therefore lower the building?
We could do the stair, the bathroom and the kitchen. Yes.
Yeah, that central element on the section, which has just got utility rooms in it, not habitable rooms.
Yeah.
In order to kind of reduce the height further.
So 2,400 to the bathroom
and the floor of the bedroom will be lower than the roof to the west, but you're not going out onto that roof anyway, are you? Other than for maintenance.
There is intended, but we could obviously review. There is intended to be a small balcony, but given what you're saying also about full height glass, that is intended to be a sliding door, but potentially we could reduce that to just a window and then not. And
my last question is materials, which appear to be like weatherboards and tiles. Is that right?
Yeah.
On this element?
Yeah. So the upper level.
Are you going to try and why weatherboards?
We worked with the council, and to be honest, that is their preference for weatherboards. And
do you see the tiles as being trying to match what's there or something else?
No, so we match existing.
Are you taking tiles off to do this?
There will be tiles taken off.
So you'll be reusing them?
Look, we could if they were the right quality. Otherwise, we'd be matching like for like.
They'll no doubt be far better than what you can buy new today.
Fair enough then.
Okay. Thanks, Jan.
Okay, so in fact, you're saying then, Stephanie, you'd be prepared to accept a condition which would lower that element lower it by 300 millimetres.
Yes, and just so I can confirm with you, that would be over in that section, Tony, over the stair, the bathroom and the kitchen, and then we would just retain the 2,700 in the living area. Is that so we're on the same page? Yeah.
Yes, no problems with that.
Yes, and that would lower the highest point of the building to no higher than the ridge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a good.
In fact, it'll end up being 50 perhaps mils lower.
Yeah. Which that's nice.
Okay. Good. All right then. Anybody got a question? No? Thank you very much for your cooperation, Stephanie. There'll be no surprises as to what our recommendation will be. Thank you. It'll be on the website by the end of the week. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Bye-bye.
Good luck,
Stephanie. Bye.
Bye.
And if we can just go back to item number 1 now, which is 15A Lower Wickham Road, Neutral Bay.
Madam Chair, Natalie is on the line.
Natalie's on the line. Natalie Nolan from Nolan Planning. I believe you're representing the applicant. And we also had Alex Lakowski. Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Hi. Sorry, I just missed the first part of that. I'm not sure. It's Natalie Nolan. Sorry, I just missed what happened. I didn't hear any of the previous bit. Actually can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Natalie. There's some gremlins in the system. And we wanted to make sure you had the opportunity to address the panel and just to advise us if you had any issues with any of the conditions. We note that it's recommended for approval and we're all familiar with the papers and have been briefed, but giving you the opportunity to respond to any conditions or anything you wish to say. Oh, we do have a couple of questions as well.
Okay. Thank you, Chair and Committee. We have reviewed the obviously the assessment report myself, the client, heritage people and draft people. We've worked hard with Robin and her team with this application and we appreciate the work that they've done with us as well. And we're really happy with the recommendation. The clients and applicants happy to accept the conditions of consent. We think they're reasonable and we think it's a good outcome and we'll support the recommendation.
Rightio, thank you. Well, we do have some questions. One is in respect of the fish pond depth. Another one is in respect of the driveway width. Can I invite Veronique to ask some questions about the fish pond depth?
Yep. I noticed in the plan, that the centre of the fish pond is over 300 millimetres deep. And I'm just wondering what depth it is and what's the compliance issue with it as well? Whether it's a human fish pond.
I'm guessing, obviously I didn't draw the plans. I would assume that it's just a graphical description rather than a dimensioned one. We will need to comply with the standards in that regard, which I think was the 300 mils. Happy to have a condition in that regard or whichever way you think, or if even you thought to amend the plan, happy to do that. I mean, it is just a fish pond. So you can either, I suppose, could be clarified by a condition of consent. If you think that was the best way to deal with it.
Okay, thank you.
I'll invite Tony to ask about the driveway. Thank you. You're on mute, Tony.
Sorry, thanks, Jen. Just out of curiosity on the fish pond, is the deeper part in the centre for something to do with fish habitat?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think there was that much effort, that much thought put in it, to be honest. I think it's just a feature and no, I don't believe it's got anything to do. It was nothing that's been a big emphasis of the client is the fish pond. It's probably more of a landscape feature. So he's definitely not a fish keeper by any means at the moment.
Okay.
So, yeah,
no, well,
nothing there.
Okay, well, I'll move on then. Natalie, we had a discussion about the resolution of the street frontage. And I think we understand that you're using the existing driveway and hard stand.
Yep.
But you're going to install a turntable.
That's correct.
To allow access to what looks like a new garage for 2 vehicles.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so so it would be possible under that scenario to have 4 vehicles parked in the front zone, the zone of this property that fronts the street. So, and that I don't think we have a problem with that per se, but I suppose the question is that the entire frontage of this property seems to be, well, not the entire frontage because there's a little gate on the right-hand side with planter box, but it seems to be an oversupply of cars to what you really need. And so we were wondering whether it would be possible to actually reduce the footpath crossover, which is currently a generous 2-car footpath crossing, And most councils these days try and reduce footpath crossings to increase pedestrian only zone and amenity and so forth.
Yeah. You mean the vehicular crossing? Is that what
yeah, yeah. So it could very reasonably be a single vehicle crossing onto the turntable, turn around into two spaces in the garage. There's a space for a third car still where the turntable is, but it would create space for additional planting on the street. And I would think on your property, if you kind of got a landscaper to look at it carefully, and the sense of just getting more landscape and a more balance rather than all just being totally devoted to car parking either undercover or in the open was something we discussed, and I'd just like to ask what your views about that would be.
I don't think that should be an issue. I suppose I assume that with the turning area, it shouldn't affect access for the vehicles. I mean, the intention of having the parking area where it is that so it wasn't, you don't have a garage door facing the street or that kind of, and it's not blocking the view of the house.
And you keep 2 decent street trees.
That's correct. Yes, it's kind of just the most logical position. So I actually can't remember. I think you are right. I think it's quite a very wide vehicular crossing and that there's definitely scope to reduce that. I suppose the only hesitation is just to check. I would have to just make sure that we can. I can't see it would be an issue, but the access, given we've got the turning area, I would assume that a reduced width of the crossing would be fine, just to still maintain as long as we achieve access.
Well, it's not like you're going into a multi-storey underground car park. One lane is more than adequate for 2 or 3 vehicles.
I mean, what's the normal width? I think 3.5 metres or something, is it?
Something like that, yeah. The council would be able to advise you.
Yeah, I think some narrowing down of that could work.
Great. And some additional, and really try and whatever space you gain, use it for.
Yeah, I don't know how much we'd gain more on site though.
Oh, I think you might gain. You might be surprised.
Get some tapering or something.
Yeah.
On the western side.
And you could, and obviously you could extend the verge. You could do 2 things. You could. It's about turning circles into the garage, but it may be that you can extend the area of grass under those trees further along and give them more space, or maybe there's another plant. I don't know. Is it saying a good landscape solution would really benefit this project?
No, I'm happy with that. Is there some way we can get a condition that or a feedback from the council engineer about what that would be, what that entail, or
Jan?
I should imagine it would be a 3.5 metre footpath opening. That would be necessary, and then at the moment it's significantly more, but a 3.5 metre would accommodate the requirements of your applicant, I would have thought.
Yeah,
it may be the additional landscaping on your site is in respect of even planter boxes or something, because I'm not sure of what's underneath. So I understand that too.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, definitely I'll run it past the architect this afternoon. I can even email Robin straight away from there. If there was any I don't see a complication with it, but as I said, I'm not a designer, so I just
Well, if you could just get back to us, that would be.
So you're talking about 3.5 metres at the curb, and then and maybe widening a bit towards the property boundary, or.
You probably need to put some turning circle swept path.
That's what I was thinking,
just to see what happens. Yep.
Okay, I'll get that done. Well, I'll speak to the architect and then email something back to Robin quite quickly.
Okay, then. And then the only other thing is, which is really a consequential thing as well, would be that the final landscape plan, because they've asked for some, a minimum, a reduction in the paved area and more given to soft landscaping or landscaping, and that then that landscape plan would come back to the manager of development services as opposed
not the certifier.
Okay, that's the only other thing. Yep. Okay. Right, yeah, thank you, Natalie. If you can get back to us by email to Robin, that'd be wonderful. Thank you
Thanks
so
very much for your time.
Great, bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
So that formally closes this meeting for this afternoon of the local planning panel, and the time is 3:23.